So the next session that we're going to have is a panel discussion, and at each of the symposiums we take the opportunity to draw on our real-life issues and have people from the community share with us how they deal with some of those issues. And this year we decided to focus on travel and how to make travel accessible and have the best possible travel experience that you can. And my job is just to introduce our speakers today. And I'm going to introduce each of them and give each of them the opportunity to share with you some of their expertise and advice. And then at the end, we want to open it for general discussion because many of you also have experiences to share that are helpful to all of us. And so we want this to be interactive and have a discussion at the end. So our first panelist is Tom Trovinger. Many of you met him last night. And Tom's with us because Tom travels a lot, okay? I went on his Facebook page to select a few photos to share in the PowerPoint. There are thousands of photos of Tom's experiences traveling, going different places. And so we thought it would be great if Tom could share with us sort of his approach to travel and some of the experiences that he's had. Dynah Haubert, who has participated on the panel before, I think our very first year, talking about accessible travel. Since that time, Dynah has gotten her law degree very recently. And Dinah's going to share, again, her personal experiences, but also her new perspective with now being a lawyer and help us understand what some of our rights are and how to advocate for yourself when you're traveling, when things don't go the way that you planned. And our other panelist is Norm Simpson, who I don't think I need to introduce, but I will. And Norm is going to share with you his experience planning travel for his family and focus on like more longer distance trips to other countries and some of the issues involved in traveling abroad, and also not just planning travel in terms of getting to a destination, but also planning for travel experiences. So I'd like to begin and have Tom first share with us some of his experiences. Tom?
All right. I know that...
Let's pull this up a little bit. Sorry.
Okay. I know that you're probably tired of hearing from me by now, but you had to bear with me. I've like Jim was saying, I've traveled quite a bit. I've went just about every form of travel that there is. I've went by on buses, trains, airplanes, and cruises, and I had good and bad experiences about each one of them. I would have to say there's pros and cons for each one, probably based on everybody's ability and their needs. But I think the most important thing is to, don't hesitate to, double, triple, quadruple check on reservations. Sometimes even when you do that, it still doesn't turn out right. I don't know anything about the legal aspect of what hotels and transportation companies are supposed to do for you by law, but I mean, it's important to let people know what you need and what's unacceptable for you. Probably one of the easiest trips I went on was a cruise ship. The actual cruise ship part of it was really easy to get around in. It was great not having to worry about carrying money around to pay for everything. There was all kinds of food available, which I like. The only bad thing about the cruise ship, I think, was my particular trip, we went to the Bahamas, and when you go on a shore excursion, which is, a trip off the ship to the mainland, I guess, I don't know if it's like this with all countries outside the U.S., but it was really difficult to get around in a wheelchair in the Bahamas. They tried to make it accessible, but it really wasn't. There was a lot of, gravel roads and curb cuts that were in disrepair, things like that. One of the most difficult trips I went on, and also my absolute favorite trip, was a whitewater rafting trip with Explorer on the Colorado River in Utah and Colorado. There's a few of you in here that went on that trip with me and went on other trips that they had with, other people. But that organization, Explore, is amazing. It's a very difficult trip. There's a lot of able-bodied people I know that wouldn't or couldn't do it. And I thought myself I couldn't do it because they don't make the outdoors very accessible in nature. So, but that group is, it's a adaptive sports group, and their whole thing is to make things possible for people that normally wouldn't have that option. And after the trip, I thanked everybody for helping me with it because there was no way I could do it without their help. But they look at it from the point of view that almost every one of them was like, no, we want to thank you for letting us help you. And that was the most difficult trip I went on, but the best trip. Because I've always felt like, there was nothing better than the feeling you get from doing something that people think you can't do. And, it was amazing to be able to, the sense of accomplishment I got from doing something that even I didn't think I could do. And my general outlook on the whole thing is, you got to push yourself beyond your comfort zone and be willing to go see what you can do outside of your comfortable environment.
Good. Thanks, Tom.
Move this up, please. Yeah, I think. Great, thank you. So this is a huge topic, and there's so much I could say, but I tried to whittle it down to a few key things that I think are really important to know as travelers with disabilities, which we can all be travelers. And I thought I would focus on two main aspects of travel, which are flying and hotel rooms, because those are some big areas where the law is really clearly laid out. But as Tom alluded to, it's just in the United States. When you go out of the U.S., you know, there's nothing that protects you like the laws we have here. So, Norm, you have some really good slides in here about air travel too. So you made a lot of my points for me. So I would recommend that you read Norm's slides about air travel, or maybe we're going to talk about it.
I was planning on going fast through those.
Okay. Well, two parts of flying that can be problematic with the chair and the disability are, first of all, going through security. TSA has procedures that are really clear and really outlined to deal with how you get screened if you can't walk through the screening equipment. Those are all spelled out on their website, and they even have a hotline that you can call if you have any questions, and there's a link to that in your materials. So if that's a cause for concern for you at all, check that out before you fly. One tip about that I just learned and that has changed my flying experience is that you don't have to take your shoes off. If you have a disability, you can just say, it's hard for me, or I can't do that, or it takes me too long because of my disability. But chances are they won't even ask. If you're getting patted down, as you do if you can't go through the X-ray machine, they'll just do a little explosive swab thing on your shoes, and they won't even ask you. So that was a recent discovery for me, and it's great because I cannot deal with TSA screeners patting me down and touching my feet. No one has gotten kicked in the face yet, but it's come close. The other part of the flying process that can be kind of daunting is getting on and off the plane and what happens to your chair or your other adaptive equipment that you brought on during that time. And that is all covered by a law called the Air Carrier Access Act. And that applies, again, to only within the U.S. It applies to U.S. airline companies that are providing commercial transportation. So it's all really spelled out what they can't do, such as not allow you to fly because you have a disability, or tell you that you have to fly with a companion. It provides for them to be trained to carry your wheelchair or other equipment in, well, they can't count it against you as baggage, so they can't charge you for it. And if they damage it, they have to replace it. It is not like a suitcase where there's a limit of $50 or something. They have to replace it. But one thing that's key for you guys to do is as soon as you get off the plane and you get your chair or your walker or whatever back, you have to look at it really closely. And if there is anything wrong, you tell them immediately. And that starts the process for them to get it fixed. I'm talking anything. I used to have a pink chair, and one time when I got it back, there were some scratches on the frame, and I told them that. And a couple days later, a tube of pink touch-up paint arrived in my mail, paid for by the airline. So if anything that matters to you, certainly check your chair for it or your other equipment. That law, the Air Carrier Access Act, requires air carriers to have available something called a CRO, which is a complaints resolution official. This is a person who is specifically trained on disability issues and how to resolve them. So if you're having an issue getting on a plane and they're giving you problems, they're not resolving it to your satisfaction, you can say, I want to speak to a CRO. And they're required to have someone, either there in person or through the phone, who you can speak to, who has the power to resolve issues on behalf of the airline. And also in your materials, I have a link to a website where you can actually file a complaint with the Department of Transportation. That's sort of after, after the issue has gone down, when you get home. If you still feel like you want to bring it to someone's attention, you can go to this website that's in your materials and let the Department of Transportation know what happened. That's just like such a little nutshell of flying. There's a lot more that I could tell you guys, but in the interest of using my time, I'm gonna talk a little bit about hotel rooms, because that's another really daunting thing, is that you all probably have heard about that the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, is supposed to cover hotels, and it's supposed to make hotels build hotel rooms that we can use. Now, as anyone who has done any traveling probably knows, that's not always what you get. Unfortunately, the law spells out really specifically what they're supposed to have, that's great. But in practice, you rarely ever get that. So one thing, and Tom, you mentioned double, triple checking everything. This kind of goes along with that. Don't be afraid to, at any time in the process, when you're booking or when you're checking in or when you get into your room, ask tons of really specific questions that pertain to what you need. I'm not talking about read the law and say to them, oh, well, I see here you're supposed to have this. Think about what you need to access the room. And if you're booking a room, if you call and just say, I'd like an ADA room, it's really kind of a crapshoot sometimes as to what you're gonna get if you're gonna be able to use that independently. So you're gonna have a much better time if you ask really specific questions. If you say, does the toilet in the room have grab bars next to it? Tell me what the shower looks like. That's another tricky issue, is that hotel rooms have two types of showers that they can have in them and still be considered accessible. They can just have a tub with a chair that they put in it and a removable shower head, or they can have a whole open shower stall that you can roll into. So if you prefer one of those, you gotta ask when you're booking the room. Another tip that I found really helpful is that, yes, the law says that they're supposed to have a chair that goes in that shower, but a lot of times they don't. So after you've asked, if they say they don't have anything, you gotta get creative. You think about, are there pool chairs? Are there, what about the chair that's at the desk in your room? All of those can make really fine shower chairs in a pinch. So, and if someone tries to give you a problem about doing something like that, then you can say, look, this room doesn't suit my needs, and I know that you guys are required to have the shower that I can use by law, and you don't. So let's work together to come up with some other solution, and maybe that's using a chair from the dining room. Actually, at the hotel that I stayed at last night, right next door, they were out all out of shower chairs. So I called and asked, and they said, "We're sending someone to go get some." That was amazing to me. Like, they recognized that there was this need and that it was so important that they had someone go out and buy them. That was a really good experience. The last thing that I wanted to make sure that you guys know about hotel rooms is that when it comes to the point where you've checked in the room and it doesn't work for you in some way, then when you have to go discuss your needs with the desk person, 9 times out of 10, they will tell you something like, "But we've been inspected by the ADA." I have 2 problems with that. And the first thing is, that is not true, okay? The ADA is a law. It's a piece of paper. It's not some body of people who go around to hotels measuring, shower doors and stuff. And there isn't really anything like that. But hotels will still tell you that. And the second reason that I find that statement problematic is that it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter if someone has come in and given them some seal of approval and says, your hotel is ADA certified. If it doesn't work for me, then I need them to work with me to find a solution that's going to enable me to use that room and to have a decent stay. So again, in your materials, there's a link to a website that has a ton of information about the ADA, and also how to file a complaint with the Department of Justice. And again, like with the airline complaints, after your travels, when you got home, if you are still seething about the access issue, like I am many times, you can go to this website and bring your issue to the attention of the Justice Department, who will look into it, and nothing may ever happen, nothing may ever come of it, but you will know that they're aware of your issue. That's mostly all I have. I don't know. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so most of you traveled here, so I know you have some experience in traveling. Jen asked me to kind of go over the common sense of what we've done in traveling. We go to a lot of the NAF meetings, and we try to, when Donovan made his wish, he also put on a lot of things that were interesting, like I want to swim with the dolphins, I want to see a volcano. So we decided that, we don't need Make-A-Wish to make some of those wishes come true. We could do that as a family. So, I've had double hip replacements. So, it's not about me, but what I learned is I learned how to re-walk. You ever sat a guy that's 6'3" on an airplane with hip problems is a big deal. So I learned what to look for in airplanes. And I learned how to kind of understand his needs based on the pain that I had to endure for a couple years. I wrote this for a group that's not you, so I won't even talk about the progressive stuff. Where we've been, Australia, England, Utah, you can read the list. We've been around, and we enjoy traveling. We enjoy visiting our FA family all over the country and all over the world. We swam with the dolphins in Florida. Now, this picture doesn't show it, but my entire family was there because we decided, let's go for Thanksgiving. And so my parents, my brother, my niece, and my family, we all got on a plane and we went down to Florida and we had Thanksgiving, and this was Thanksgiving Day. We ski up in the mountains. We explore the castles in England. We've done Tom's whitewater rafting trip, not with Tom, because boy, he's a pain. And there's some of the bathroom techniques, Tom, in case you want to see for the next time. And we did the ATV ride. Just bizarre. Donovan actually got to drive one for a little bit, scared the heck out of me. But we found that people are really nice and accommodating in a lot of sense. You know, we saw surfing today. In Hawaii, we got to surf. So, and then this was right after we got the diagnosis. The genetic testing was mailed, and we went to Australia for 3 weeks. I had a meeting to go to, and I took 2 extra weeks, and we just cleared our brains, got rid of, we just wanted to be normal. In his final checklist in Hawaii, we did the volcano. And you see the glow at night. We stayed to nighttime. You know, it turns out, you know, in Hawaii, it's very warm on the beaches, but when you're up there on the volcano, it's pretty darn cold. And so we waited till nighttime, and we could actually see the lava glowing, which was just absolutely incredible. And for those people who weren't afraid to fly in a small helicopter, they went up and went around and saw the island. I was happy to take some pictures from the ground. So basically, are all your friends traveling? Why not me? This is the scene from our balcony in Hawaii. And, you know, this used to be Tom sitting in front of the TV before he started traveling. And you're ready to go, but wait, there's a little bit of homework we got to do first. Traveling is not just get on a plane and go, especially today. There's cost considerations, accessibility, the enjoyment factor, and the adventure factor. And the two different enjoyment factors are, some people like to go to the beach and just read a book. Before Donovan, Deborah and I used to love to do that. Now the enjoyment factor could be a theme park, or it could be an adventure like going down the Colorado River. Cost. You know, if we all had unlimited funds, we'd fly first class, go to an all-inclusive, and things would be good. However, none of us really fit the bill in this room. So what I'm trying to do is focus on how to get the most value out of your plan and how to be your own travel agent. If not, there are disability organizations out there. I haven't tried them, I haven't used them, but this is in your package, and so you can call some of these people. They show up at the NAF meeting, the MDA meetings, and stuff like that, so I've talked to them a little bit, and they have people that will do all that internet web searching for you. Choose your location. What is it that you want to do? Do you want to hang out in a tropical place? Do you want to explore parks, cruise ships? Do you want to see Europe, Australia? There's a ton of stuff. These are awesome search engines, right? Look and see where you want to go and what the deals are. There are deals out there all the time. Before I ever go to a different country, a different state, I have Googled the heck out of it so that I'm familiar with the streets, how to get from the airport to the hotel that we're going to go to. You know, we flew to Paris, Deborah and I, shortly after we got married, and we had the wrong hotel name. So we got to walk most of Paris looking for our hotel. Well, with accessibility, with Donovan in a wheelchair, that's going to be much tougher. So I've learned to be a little bit more of an advocate on familiarizing myself as a parent where we're going to go and how we're going to get there. Also, it's competitive, okay? I go to Google, I go to Expedia, to be honest with you, and I look at airlines, and I try to find out what the flight from point A to point B is. Once I find that, I look at the other airlines, I look at the other websites, and I try to see if, you know, like Orbitz, and see if I can get a cheaper flight. Then I also go back and go directly to the airline. And I find that, you know, for Expedia to have discounted prices, a lot of times I get it cheaper directly from the airline. Not all the time. So it's worth a little bit of research because you save yourself some money. Accessibility, Googling accessibility is great. When we went to Hawaii, one hotel I asked, I said, "Oh, are you accessible?" "Oh, yes, sir, we're accessible." I said, can you explain what you mean by accessibility? You know, and so they had accessible rooms, which means they had a grab bar on the wall. I said, "Oh, okay, let me book a room." He says, "Okay, we're going to put you on the second floor." I said, "Oh, you have an elevator?" "No." "Really?" "I'm serious." And so that was it. We didn't use that hotel just because I made that call, as opposed to showing up there, we were looking for places on the beach. And so they offered accessible accessibility to the beach. Well, that means that they had a little cement ramp that ran to the sand. And that was the hotel's accessibility to the beach was. It wasn't an accessible beach, okay? So those are the things that you have to call once you isolate the hotels that you're interested in, the area that you want, and find out specifically what are the accessibilities. Because again, in Europe, it's a whole different story. So as many times as their hotels are very old. That's part of what we're going to see. We want to be in a different culture. We want to be in a different area. And so you have to kind of go with the flow a lot. But at the same time, you don't have to be tortured by not being able to get to your room on the 3rd floor. Check for off-season. Mondays, Thursdays are typically cheaper. You know, flying out on a Friday, coming back on a Sunday, you're going to spend a lot of money. Oh, so here we go. So then this is what I was just talking about. This is the different types of accessibilities that you get. Some people don't understand the word accessibility. They think that, you know, you might need Braille signing. You know, something that we're not interested in, but their room is accessible because it has Braille writing. So again, like Dana was saying, it's very clear-cut what accessible rooms are supposed to be like. It's a different story when you get there. I find that when you book online, or you book through calling their 1-800 number, you're not talking to the hotel directly. And so after I book that and I get my reservation number, I call the specific hotel that I'm going to get the rest of the confirmations and let them know I'm going. The same thing with the airline. I did a quick example last year, 4 nights in Cancun, just to kind of give you a ballpark that, you know, from December 5th to the 9th, off season, for those 4 nights in Vegas was about $800. Okay, so that's expensive, but not expensive. That was less than Tom's bar beer tab, but you know, I mean, I try to include eating and everything in that. So that would be everything that you want to do. Do your homework. Remember, and again, when you travel outside the ADA, you lose your rights. One of the things that I will tell you is that even though you lose your rights, you don't lose your humanity. And we have been so surprised at how we travel to be open to have people help us. And people come out of the woodworks, and, you know, being a New Yorker, I'm a little nervous when people come up and say, hey, can I help you? And yet at the same time, I have gotten so much help throughout the world from people that I didn't know. We have gotten to be friends with people in England who just befriended us for an entire week, and they gave us clues on where to go and what to do. The accessible, we saw him surfing. That was because of a lifeguard on the beach where we were standing. He wanted to talk to us and learn about why Donovan was in a wheelchair and everything else. Of course, his code was he had wiped out on a surfboard while, you know, doing the big waves, you know. He had a story for the girls. Cruises are actually very accommodating. Trains are much easier, but you got to be careful of the ramps. Susie Cease, Zach Cease, one of our kids, 17 years old with Friedreich, just went on his Make-A-Wish through Europe and took trains. And I got a lot of stories from Susie on some of the challenges that they had with some of the trains. Always accommodating. Once they brought it to the people's attention, they took care of it. But they, you know, in the closet or around the corner was the ramp that you needed to get between the gap between the train and the platform. So again, you can't just like manhandle it and try and do it yourself and then fall between the trains. That's ridiculous. Ask for help. Tom hit it right on the bat. Call. You know, book your airline and then call the terminal. So I call the day before, let them know, you know, remember, we're coming. A lot of people don't realize they hold the front row of seats normally for ADA people. And so it's a first come, first served basis. So the quicker you can call and talk to them, and I just kind of explained to them that, wow, you know, he's going to need to use the restroom. How are you going to arrange that? Can we be closer to the restroom and give the person an explanation of the movements he does? We normally sit at the front of the plane. Now, I've yet to get first class, but I'm working on it. And it's also extremely important, and Tom can verify this, as you fly into a smaller airport, you're not going to get a gate ramp. You're going to get a lift. And all the law requires is that there's one lift at the airport. Okay? So that's cool. They have one. They have to have one. It's required by law. However, it doesn't have to be at your plane. It could be a long ways away, and it could take 30 minutes for you to get to it. Calling ahead, talking directly to that airport at the place that you're going to, they actually say, thank you, we'll arrange to have it right there for you. And that's pretty awesome. TSA, I'm not going to do that. TSA is for our protection. They just follow the checklist. They are going to check us. And I don't get mad at TSA. I get mad at the jerks who are potentially sitting in a wheelchair planning something devious, requiring us to be screened to this degree. So if you want to get mad at that. Medical supplies are important. Widgets, for example. When we went out to San Antonio, we shipped the widgets in a box and just used regular wheels. Oh, the widgets are the mechanical levers on Donovan's wheelchair. And so they can be damaged, I would assume, pretty easy by an airline guy. And so what we did is just took them off, boxed them up, told them that they were medical supplies. They looked at it, shipped it, met us on the other end. Meanwhile, he had manual wheels for a little bit while we were transferring back and forth, and everything was fine. And so those are the kinds of things. We have lost a scooter. They ripped the transmission out, and they did replace it. It did take time. And one of the things that you should do as parents and as the people with FA out there, save your receipts. They required us to have the original receipt for the scooter that we had originally bought, that it was ours, that we had bought it, so that somebody didn't loan it to us or whatever. So we were able to get back the full price of what it was to buy a new one. Just FYI, it was interesting. She talked about the CRO, very important. Mary Bodie talked to me a lot about that, Mary Caruso, and she's what I call a challenge traveler, because if it could happen, it will happen to her and her girls. And so I've learned a lot from her. And that's one of the things, too, that what you guys are doing right now is you're learning. I always listen to the stories on everybody else and how they travel, what their experiences are, because I learn from the problem when they have problems. This has to be resolved before you take off. And once you contact them, the plane cannot take off until it's resolved. So there's a lot of pressure on the airline to get it resolved right then and there, just FYI. One of the things, too, that I've done, I've learned the hard way, is all over the country are MDA offices. We're all part of MDA, or should be, and they all have loaner closets, and they will actually loan stuff to people outside their jurisdiction if you need it. And I know this because my MDA office, when I have friends and FA family come to town and they need a wheelchair, they actually arrange it for me. I just let the MDA know that we're going to need a wheelchair. It's not usually the highest quality, but they don't have to carry it on the plane. They don't have to bring it from Europe. They don't, there's a lot of interesting things that you can do. So MDAs, just keep that in mind. Also keep in mind, too, before you go on a trip, to service your wheelchair. Tighten the screws. People don't think about that. There's pragmatics. I'm a pragmatic kind of person. So the world's a lot smaller than you think, and you should enjoy it. We're on the Black Beach here in Hawaii, and it's just amazing. The other thing I wanted to just do before I close up is there's also things to think about. How many people have ever played with these? Fluorescent tubes, right? You break them, and they glow bright for 12 hours. Well, we know Friedreich's ataxia, when you're in the dark, you are pretty limited at what you can do. So I carry these with me all over the place. I put them in the medical bag for Donovan. And so if power goes out wherever we're at, we break these open. They're $1 a piece. They're better than a candle. We won't burn down the house, right? And they're a lot less weighty than a flashlight. So one of the things we do when we travel is we carry things like this. So practical stuff. And that's all I got to say. Now, many of you have traveled and have experiences, so let's get the mics out. I'd love to hear what you've got to say, because like I said, I learned from you guys. I mean, with Tom traveling and listening to his stories, there's a lot of things I'm not going to do that Tom does. But he's my hero. To get out there and move around, for me, as a dad planning a trip, I find challenges, but when I see Tom go there by himself and get on the airplanes and go to where he needs to go to, that to me, he's my hero.
I want to edit his talk a bit. I'm the wife that he's gotten all those pictures over there. I just want to kind of give a little footnote. He mentioned the parks that you can go to. I don't know if you know this, but if you go to any U.S. park, you can get a free admission. You go to their guest services, you fill out their disability form, and you can go to any park in the United States free. They're all free for someone with a disability. All you do is go fill out the pass. It's a fabulous, fabulous resource that we have.
Thank you all. That was great. I think I have a question that would be directed to Dynah.
Thank you.
And let me just let you know what happened leading up to my question here. Bridget and I were going to go somewhere, and we decided we were going to travel by bus. So I had arranged with, I think it was Trailways, could have been Greyhound, but I found out what you needed to do was plan in advance several days and organize it so that the bus that they provided for the time of the day and the date that we were traveling would be one that could accommodate a wheelchair. So I did all that, and I figured, okay, we're good to go. It's not going to be a problem. Had to go through, you know, some rigmarole, filling out some paperwork online and whatnot. But I thought it was all set. Meantime, our plans changed, and so our decision was made that we would drive instead. So I figured, okay, well, I don't really need to let them know. They were just going to have that bus available anyway. I didn't really think it was a problem. I got a phone call from the bus station an hour before it was to depart to tell me that the wheelchair accessible bus sadly could not be made available. So I was floored because I could not understand how that could be an acceptable practice or even legal. So that's really my question. Is that something that is acceptable, legal, and if not, what are the recourses?
That's a really good question. I'm sorry to hear about that experience, but I'm glad that you didn't get to the bus station and have to deal with that. It's not okay, as you probably knew deep down. That is not okay. It's not legal. They can't do that. They can make you go through requesting the bus ahead of time for a certain time slot. They have to provide accessible buses, but they don't have to do it instantaneously, unfortunately. So they can make you arrange everything up to 48 hours ahead of time. But as far as the letting you know an hour beforehand that they don't have the bus, that's not okay. As for recourse, the bus companies are covered under the ADA. There are sort of two lines of recourse that I would say you should pursue, or I would. The first is with the actual company. I would get your complaint up the chain, you know, keep trying to get it to a higher person, and just let them know how much that is problematic for you and how that could ruin many people's trips. Besides that, I would also encourage you or anyone in that situation to file a complaint with the Department of Justice. It's the same website that I linked here that I talked about filing a complaint about a hotel issue. It's the same thing, because it's the same law. You won't necessarily, you know, it's really unlikely that someone's going to call you the next day and say, like, oh, well, we're fining them $1 million or something, as much as we wish that could be the outcome. But the thing that happens is if the Department of Justice gets other complaints from the same company, they'll start looking at them and scrutinizing them more deeply. So they might actually end up taking some kind of action, like filing suit against them or settling with them and requiring them to do certain things for disabled passengers. You're welcome.
Mary Lisa?
On the bus issue, I fly frequently from Tucson to LA. My son is in a chair. And I always call, there's a bus that goes from LAX to the Valley. And I always call in advance and tell them what time our flight is arriving. And if they don't have an accessible bus there, because only 50% of their buses are accessible, they will pay for a taxi. So I find that very nice. But
That's really cool.
it is. The other thing I was going to comment on is with traveling with hotels. Frequently, their accessible room, they've taken the movable shower head and put it so high you can't get to it. You can't open and close your drapes, either because you can't reach the rod or the bed is shoved over there. I make it a point, and when we arranged the conference in Vegas, I had them do a lot of that stuff for everybody. I make it a point when we check in to make sure that they go up, not me, they go up and move the shower head. I mean, I could do it, but I want them to remember it needs to be done for every person in a chair. So, just a hint, make the hotel do it.
Yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to say was that, similar to that, you can ask them to change your hotel room around in a lot of ways. It's not necessarily an ADA issue or a legal issue, but like, for instance, sometimes hotels have a ton of furniture in them that makes it really hard to get around in a chair and to get to power outlets and stuff. You can go to the front desk and say, hey, can you get that sofa out of the room, because it makes it really hard for me to use it. And they should do it. So things like that, yeah, ask them to do stuff for you. If there's anything that you can identify that you can say, hey, if that was changed or if that was out here, it would make my life a whole lot easier. Don't be afraid to ask them.
Gretchen?
I just wanted to share an experience that I had with my son Sean, actually in Chicago after the NAF conference there. People recognize you have a disability if you're in a chair. And as most of you know, because most of you are in this position or were in this position, when you're still walking, they may not know that you have a disability. And I was really used to going, when you're at airports, that before they load the planes, and this is O'Hare, which is like a disaster in and of itself, that they say if anyone is traveling with small children, anyone needs extra help, to come up, and they load you first before they load anybody else. Well, here I am with my 19-year-old who weighs well over 200 pounds, so he's not a 7-year-old, and they didn't make the announcement. So all the people that have the high priority load, like they have the gold cards or whatever, are all crowded up near the gate, and they didn't do it, and they were going to start to load them. Well, if an 8-year-old falls in your lap as they are staggering down the aisle, it's not such a big deal. If my son falls into your lap because he loses his balance, there's going to be a real problem. So I had him put his hand on my shoulder, and I'm pretty assertive. We just muscled our way all the way through to the gate and told him, we really need to load first. At least he does, before people get on there. And they were very accommodating once they knew, but I guess the thing I learned from this is, don't assume that they are going to load you first. When you get to the gate, make sure you let the people at the gate know that you have to do this. Because we were polite, but people were giving us dirty looks all the way up. And it's not something you think about. I think if they had looked out and saw him in a wheelchair, they would have been like, aha, we need to load you either, But that's just my 2 cents. The other thing is, if you are traveling and you need to use the MDA for a loaner chair, we just got a loaner chair this year because our son fell and injured himself and we needed one. And they're fabulous, but you need to give them some lead time because it's not like you call them and they come out in the next day or in a couple hours. They may need a couple of weeks to get their people out to get you a chair.
We have time for just one or two more questions, and then we'll move on. Go ahead.
I noticed on vacation that you had a super pole that you brought with you. Is that a special one that you can take on vacation, or is that the typical one that you buy?
A lot of people I know have them in their house, like installed permanent. But if you, and I Googled it to find mine, there is a version called a travel super pole that it splits in half. So rather than one long, like 8-foot pole, you got 2 pieces of 4-foot pole. That you know, it's fairly easy to put together. It's just a couple of pins that hold it all together. I mean, it's pretty easy to explain to somebody how to do it, and I mean, I think it may have been a little bit more expensive than just the regular Super Bowl, but the difference was minimal, and it makes a world of difference when you mount it right beside your bed in a hotel room. Incidentally, I have noticed that some of the hotel rooms you go to, the bed is like ridiculously hot to transfer into. I learned at the NAF in Chicago from somebody else, I can't remember who. Sometimes the hotels are able to remove the box spring and just put the mattress directly on the floor. It makes a huge difference. And I've done that quite a few times since then.
Okay, one more. In the back, Richie?
All right. My question is not necessarily travel-based, but it's more like leisure-based. I'd like to attend sporting events, and maybe Dynah, you can answer this. I find it very annoying. I'm from Boston, and the Celtics all the time will offer $10 seats, so you can go to a game for $10. So I always try to get them, but the lowest accessible seat is $50. So is that legal?
No, it's not legal for them to do that. But in situations like that, because I have been in that situation before, and if you may want to call ahead of time to verify this, but stadiums are usually pretty good about if you have a ticket that you bought that's a discount or a Groupon or someone gave it to you even, if you go there and you bring it to the guest service desk, they will often exchange it for an ADA seat. I've never encountered that in a situation where it's sold out. I'm not sure what would happen in that case, but a lot of times you are able to just ask them and they'll switch out the ticket, and then you get the same deal as everybody else, but you get a seat that's accessible for you, which is of course how it should work.
Yeah. You also have the ADA office at the venue, yeah. And so we do a lot of stuff at the Garden, and we just call them directly. They actually hold seats back, but if you get it cheaper somewhere else, and you call them and say, I bought 2 tickets on Ticketron, but now I need them, my child decided to come and he's going to be in a wheelchair, they'll give us the wheelchair equivalencies. So it's 9 times out of 10 they will, but it's worth calling ahead after, tell them that you have the ticket, and see how they respond to that.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you all very much. Dynah, Tom, Norm, thank you.